Welcome back, folks. This video is starting off in the exact spot that we left off last time, and if you couldn't read the title, we're going to be popping a 459 Predator engine into this thing. Now I know a lot of people are going to say it's not a mower anymore, and the only thing we're losing here is the original motor and our transmission, and we kind of have to get rid of the transmission because it's cracked in half. Besides that, it should just be kind of straightforward. I say that now, but it's probably not going to be. We're going to do a torque converter, hopefully, and then I think the only tricky part is going to be routing the chain to the back with a whole bunch of tensioners somehow. I haven't figured out how to do that yet or what I'm going to do, but I'm going to start by taking off pretty much everything I've put on this thing in the last 8 months. So that should be fun. So our engine's out. I don't know what it is about these engines, but the pulleys are near impossible to pull off. We just got the battery and the transmission left, right now at least. All right, it is not looking good right now. So obviously the gas tank, the muffler, and the air filter are all going to be taken off, so that we're good height-wise. But I don't know about width-wise. I don't know if that hood is going to fit over that, so we might have to do some trimming to make this thing fit. Now that we got our seat, wheels, and fenders off, I'm going to direct your attention back to this modern art we got here. It's definitely a more severe crack than I originally thought. So something definitely went wrong in there, or just that initial crack from assembling it wrong just weakened the case. And well, to the scrap pile. And there we go, our trans is out along with everything else needed to build this thing from the ground up now. We do have some sad news on the power plant end. I got the torque converter in the mail. I was playing around with it and it's massive, and that's our problem. If you take a look at it, it is sticking out of the hood everywhere you look, and that kind of ruins the aesthetic I'm going for here. Because I wouldn't be able to use the hood. So we got some figuring out to do, and that is probably going to come in the form of a 301 engine that I had sitting around. Now, I know what you're going to say, that it's a lot smaller engine and not enough power, but it will fit in the hood. Hopefully, we haven't got the torque converter on yet, but I should be able to raise it up, unlike this one, without going over the hood line there. All right, I just swapped it around for a little mock-up. And even this is going to be tight. We do have an inch or two to play with on top, but what we're gaining is the side. Because of the different torque converter, we'll still be able to use our hood probably perfectly fine. Maybe a little bit of trimming needed, but this should work a lot better. All right, with our engine issue out of the way, we're going to start building this thing from the back to the front, just because that's the parts I got in right now. So this is our new axle we just got. It is 3/4. And ideally, this is way too small. I would have went with 1 1/4 if I had a choice. But we are trying to reuse our mower tires, and that is a 3/4 axle diameter, so that's what we're going to go with. Now, in order to minimize the likelihood of this axle twisting in half, we went with 3 supports. So it's going to look like something like this. And when we're building it, the only thing we have to be mindful of is we have to put our brake on one side and our sprocket on the other side because of our seat placement, because it would hit it if it was in the center. So with that being said, let's build an axle.
Now what we just did there at the end was square our axle up relative to the frame, so that hopefully in the future we won't have any issues with our chain falling off or something not lining up. So we got these pretty well lined up. We just got some holes to drill. The axle is officially in, and we can go ahead and slap some other stuff on there like our brakes and our sprocket. With the sprocket on and our brake disc on, that's as far as I want to get back here without getting the jack shaft put in, because I don't want to start putting things in that will probably change once I can see the whole big picture back here. But what we can do is get this engine mounted. So I was playing around with this torque converter, and it was pretty simple mounting, just the 4 bolts, and then I had to, I don't know if you can see in there, but I had to cut off the rear oil dipstick plug, and other than that, pretty straightforward. But what we're gonna do, I have this piece of 3/16" steel we're gonna use for a motor mount, and probably just gonna have to use 1 washer on the plate to keep our torque converter from hitting. The engine is now mounted and squared up, and we are going to begin working on installing our jack shaft. Now this is going to go through the frame with 2 bearings on either side, and then that's how our axle is going to be powered. Jack shaft is installed now. We're going to go ahead and flip it over and get working on some chain routing. Now we're looking at the underside here, and of course it still is set up for the belt drive. So we got to take most of everything out there. But the only space we really are concerned about is right along here, because we have these 2 conveniently cut holes up here that our chain is going to run through. So going to the torque converter, it's going to go through that one, and then returning to our jack shaft back there, it's going to go through that one. So we're going to have to set up some chain tensioners and get our rear sprocket on the jack shaft. Alright, I made some chain guides so that the chain won't slap into the bottom tensioner here. We gotta get this thing flipped over, the motor mounted, and some chain cut to see if this system will actually work.
Got the chain in just like that. And I started doing a little mock-up back here. So there's our jack shaft, our first sprocket, and then our second sprocket. And then this one's gonna go to our drive sprocket on the rear. And then our brake over here. But now we can cut our jack shaft down because obviously the wheel has to go there. So we gotta trim that up and then cut another chain. All right, with our drive line portion pretty much squared away, we're gonna move on to our brakes. Now I do have the disc mounted right there. It's about as close as we can get it to the axle mount there because we still have to have room for our wheel. Now I'm using these Chinese brakes because they were $40. And let's hope they do the trick. But first we gotta make some mounts. So that is pretty much the rear end all together. Just waiting on some nuts for each end. Other than that, we got this master cylinder to mount. But we're probably gonna throw the seat on for that next. So that's what we'll get into. Alrighty, we got the handbrake worked out. It's a bit stiff, but I think it's just because it's cheap. It does lock the rear up with no load on it, so I'd be interested to see how it does when it's actually on the ground. But for now, the brakes should be finished once we zip tie the fluid reservoir somewhere. So we've got her mostly assembled. We're getting down to the last couple things that need buttoning up. One being the exhaust. We got this, we're gonna modify it to fit in there. And then the other is an intake. Now we have a, I believe it's a 26 millimeter NIBI carburetor and air filter. And it's gonna sit in there kind of like that. So I already got this adapter to the motor built for it. And we're gonna continue building the intake from here. So I've got these pieces already cut out. And I'm gonna weld them all together to make a 90-degree angle. Gonna get a quick time lapse going, and I hope it looks a lot more like a part after I'm done. Just finished up the other half of it. We're gonna go ahead and get this bolted up and get the carburetor on. All right, we got our air filter and carb tucked in there nicely. She turned out all right. It looks pretty good for starting off as a straight pipe, and now it is not. Obviously still have to get a throttle cable in there, and we just have our exhaust and gas tank left to do. We're gonna start on our exhaust now. Just got the new exhaust slapped in there, exiting through a hole in the frame down there. And then it gets pretty close to our torque converter. It should be pretty solid. And if we ever want to make it loud, which we probably won't, but the muffler is detachable. So all we have left now is pretty much our fuel tank and our throttle cable. Went ahead and threw a temporary gas tank on there while we're making one, and routed some gas line and a kill switch back in there if you can see it. We're gonna get this thing on the ground and see if it blows up or not. We're gonna go on a little test ride, and then we're gonna get into making our gas tank.
you got a keen eye, you would realize that that just worked, which is half surprising in itself. Which means we can actually go forward and make our gas tank, which we were planning on. All right, so for our aluminum gas tank, it is going to sit underneath our seat in this seat housing that used to be our transmission housing. But we're going to run a fuel pump to power our nibby carb up here. Probably get pulse out of our intake, and we're going to have Dave make us up an aluminum tank to fit in here because it's kind of a custom shape. Seat is ripped off, and this is the spot that our gas tank is going to go. We're going to go ahead and cut some cardboard out and make a mock-up. We got our 6 cardboard cutouts. We just have to change them into aluminum now. Now with our aluminum cut out and our gas cap in hand, we can go down to Dave's and get this thing welded up.
So I'm sure Josh has told you that he has 15 years of welding experience, but yet here I am welding his gas tank. Thanks to our new Eastwood welder, I have been working on some AC TIG welding. This will be my first gas tank. Looking forward to it. Hopefully it doesn't look too terrible.
Got our tank back from Dave. We just got to cut our hole in the seat mount, and then we can mount it. We've got our gas tank installed. Now we just have our fuel pump, some lines, and some fittings to plumb in. Hood is good to go. We're back here working on our fender mounting. It's pretty much the same thing we had the first time. So we're just gonna pop those in and hopefully start painting next. Fender is ready to go. Got it nice and mounted up. The one change I did make is this is now unboltable from the fender, so it's easier to get on and off. So that should make disassembling and reassembling a little easier. We did have to leave this little notch here because our mounting point is right there. Chopped a little off the rear to make our seat fit because we moved it back for our gas cap. We got to start getting some paint off this thing, which is why we're outside, because it's gonna get dusty. We're back outside in our paint booth here, and we are going to prime the fenders. Our job up here is just to prime it, and then we're going to send it down to Dave for the final color coat. So let's get to painting. All right, we got the hood off, and it's pretty much going to be the same process through this whole thing with stripping and priming. So we'll catch back up when we're ready to throw some color on.
I know what you're thinking. Why in the world am I painting this Murray when Josh has 25 years of painting experience? I don't know what it is. I don't know. I asked myself the same question this morning.
all the time and patience and work that has went into this machine, building it throughout the months. We're gonna end her off with hopefully a couple driving clips, and if it breaks, then I'm gonna quit. Fender wobble on our little drive. She held up like a champ, and I'm gonna call it a success.